Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Is it possible to sound like a native speaker? Yes, absolutely. Of course, it's possible. The only thing which stops you is your limiting belief that you can't do it. Most people who learn English have been around non-native speakers, other students, and they kind of build up this idea that you can't sound like a native. And that's because nobody tells you how to do it. But it's like everything else in life. You just need to practice it a little bit, have a little bit of direction, and you're on your way. I've met loads of people who sound very, very native. I've also met many people who've lived here for years from other countries who've slowly developed the accent of a native speaker. Some of those are good, and some of those aren't so good. There seems to be a few wrong opinions out there. Let's just go through some of them. The first one, which is very popular, says, well, only children can develop real accents. I don't know why you would believe that. I mean, if a child can do it, so can you. What's stopping you, I wonder, except your belief that you can't? This comes up quite regularly in English classes. Quite often people begin with a statement which sounds something like this. Oh, I know I will never sound like a native speaker. I have accepted that. But where did that come from? And who said that you can never sound like a native speaker? Well, you just said it, but where did that idea come from? Who told you that? And if you look at that logically, you'll find that it's only an opinion, which has come probably just from the general consciousness of other students who don't sound like natives. So that's the first one, that only children can somehow sound like a native. The next legend or urban myth which goes around is that because you're born in one country and because you are learning English as a second language, that you can only reach so far, that it's not possible for people who are learning a second language to sound like a native, whether they're children or not. And this also is a very strange idea because it has no foundation. It doesn't come from anywhere. I think part of the problem is when you're learning a language, you learn the grammar and you learn the words. And this is all a little bit backwards. Because if you think about how a child learns, he doesn't have books because he can't read or write. He learns words slowly, and those words make his world. And that's very different from living in your world and then saying, you know what, I'm going to buy a book to teach me how to speak a second language. It seems to be some kind of fallacy or false idea that a book does everything. Thinking about it logically, if a book could help you to speak better, or if learning grammar helps you to speak better, then I wouldn't be here making this podcast, and you would be speaking better. But that's not how it is. Speaking has nothing to do with learning words. I've met loads of people from across the world who know a lot of English, but they just don't have confidence or accent to use it. But yet, if you were to forget about the words and start your journey by listening and repeating before you even begin your learning journey, then both would come together. Your accent would develop, and that would help you pronounce the words, rather than taking a word and worrying about whether you're pronouncing it correctly. So you see, it's all about your starting points. If you begin with the sounds, of course you have a much better chance than if you know 2,000 words which you don't know how to say. It's all a little bit complicated, but yet keeping learning as simple as possible when working with sound is the key to pronunciation. So how do we do it then? As adults, we can't go back and unlearn all the words to relearn them. Also, we can't become children again to learn. So what do we do? Well, there's 3 main points when it comes to learning, especially when it comes to learning how to speak. Let's talk about those points. So the first one is breathing. So you take a big deep breath in, and as you breathe out, you push the words together so that the words and your breathing are coming from a higher place. That's number 1. Number 2 is the intonation of the words. Your words are going up and down, and this is key with pronunciation. Also, there's the idea of joining the words together as if they're one word, which sounds much more fluent. But when it comes to the actual sounds and pronunciation of the words, shadowing is definitely the best way to make sure that you speak like a native. Shadowing, as you know, is when you listen to a native speaker and you imitate them exactly. Now, there's a few issues with this. You have to, first of all, make sure that the speaker is speaking in an accent that you want. So if you're looking for a British accent, you don't rush away and shadow with an American newscaster, for example. So you have to be quite clear about what you're looking for. So shadowing, along with the other points of letting the words flow instead of trying to put them into boxes. My name is, just as a very short example, you know. So these are the kind of things you want to think about. The other day at the train station, I came across someone. Now, this is very interesting. They looked like they were Asian or maybe Chinese, Japanese, I'm not sure. And they started a conversation with me. So it was a woman, and she told me, "Oh, I'm going to try to find the Loch Ness Monster today." And she said this in such an exaggerated English accent, you know, we don't speak like that anymore, that it made me a bit suspicious as to where she was from. So we were talking about the Loch Ness Monster, and she says, "Do you believe that the Loch Ness Monster exists? Do you think it exists?" And of course, I'm very cynical. And I replied, no, I don't believe the Loch Ness Monster exists. And she said, "Oh, why not? Because, you know, we all grew up with this story." And I'm thinking, I don't think you did, wherever you're from. And suddenly, one part of the conversation her articles were missing. And she said, if I see Loch Ness Monster, I would be very happy person. And I'm thinking, aha, now I know that you're not native because you've just dropped the A's. She almost had me convinced that maybe she just had a very well articulated English accent. But when she started dropping the articles, I knew immediately. And so that gave me permission to ask, so are you here on holiday? Or do you live here? And of course, she was devastated because she immediately realized that I knew she wasn't native. And she said, oh, no, I'm here on holiday. I think she told me she was Japanese. And I said, yes. She said, excuse my bad English. And I said, actually, your English is very, very good. And she said, how did you know that I wasn't a native speaker? I said, well, it's quite simple. You dropped your articles. That's how I knew. But you did speak very well. But your English sounds a little bit old school. And, we don't really talk like that anymore. And we kind of laughed and joked about it. And she made an excuse and then left. But anyway, yeah, for native speakers, many of them wouldn't notice this kind of thing. It's only because I'm a teacher that I'm always listening to people attentively just to see what their accent is like. But yeah, it is completely possible to have a native accent. And I've met people like this. There was a guy in Hong Kong I had a class with, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, and his English was perfect. There was another one from Taiwan recently, a young man who just spent his whole time with a London radio station developing his accent, and he did really, really well. The only way I knew he wasn't native was because of the gaps between his words. That was a complete giveaway that he wasn't native. So you see, you can do it, but the best way to do it is just by copying someone else and comparing. That is shadowing. So I suggest you get onto that. And when you are learning, learn by listening rather than by reading. That also will open up many doors. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this. Let's talk again soon and have a wonderful day. Bye.